So, welcome to this new day of our colloquium. Today's general topic will be about tools for interaction and improvisation. And it's my great pleasure to introduce someone you probably already know, all of you, Professor Jônatas Manzolli, who will be talking about live interaction, composition, dialoguing with improvisation, digital immersion, and augmented cognition. And, well, I will now let Jônatas talk, and we'll have the round table afterwards. So be all welcome and enjoy.
Good morning. Some of you, we know each other for a long time. Some of you we know only for 3 days, but friendship is something that you have to preserve for life, of course. So when I finished my talk today night, I realized that I was not introduced anything about our work at NICS, about the projects, the student projects. So I decided, before I start my topic, to give you a very brief overview of the projects, because I think it's important, because on Tuesday, maybe some of the students are going to interact with people from HAPMUS and so on. I think it's good to give you a very brief overview. It's more for our guests, it's some people that are following us at the internet. So, it's not a complete list. There are other students that are doing other research projects, but it's as I think it is the major topics of the PhD projects and master projects that we have been developing this few years. So actually, there are projects that are connected to musical analysis and computer models. There are projects that are connected with interactivity, sound design, machine learning, and so on, improvisation, mediation, and mediation of digital musical instruments, and so on. So, but the whole area, maybe it's somehow connected to what we are discussing here, that's computer-aided musical analysis and creation. So I'm not going to stress, this is a very brief overview, and I will only give you the titles of the projects in Portuguese, because I suppose if I made some translation and the translation was not so good, I will somehow misunderstand the meaning of the things. So, but of course, the students are here, and we can discuss their projects particularly on Tuesday, okay? So, some of the projects are the postdoc projects, like the Stefan Schaub Analysis in Contemporary Music, Tatiana working on methodology of analysis, Charles using techniques of computer modeling. This is a kind of relationship or collaboration that we have with Moreno and Jean Berson, that you know, but the other maybe don't know. But so, and we have some applications of some analytical application of models of the human ear system, development of new tools also for analysis of contemporary music. Other students, they are using audio descriptors and computer models to help them to compose. So that means, in some ways, the emphasis is more in creative process than in analytical process. So we have this kind of modality here in Brazil that's somehow different from France. So that there are students that in their work is concerning about creative process. And they are using tools to help them to create music. And this is their research. So in that case, we have Ivan, Vander, and Danilo also. So some of the guys that you have already met, so especially Vander, that has drive you in some ways around here and from the hotel and so on. And I guess the third major area or research line I described this morning is not a strong description. It is somehow connected with interactivity with computers and something I say that's mediated performance. So in that case, we have the work of Tiago, that he's working with learning methodologies in artificial intelligence to help the composers to choose sounds. Vanya she's a pianist. So I'm not introducing everybody, but they are here, okay? And she's trying to understand the behavior of a pianist according to some models like Laban theory of movement, of motion. And also Clayton, that is the guy that helps everybody here in the mixing desk. He's also using models of Laban theory and other models of motion caption to help to construct some sound design creative approach. So others like Gabriel, so he's starting to work what he called the echo improvisation. That's something that connects improvisation with the environment, but on this case, the environment is the DMAs, the musical, digital musical instruments. So this is a very brief overview, but I think Gabriel, Vanya, Clayton, Tiago, Stefan, Tatiana can also express themselves and talk with you on Tuesday. Okay? So this is very brief, and I will also introduce very briefly also some people that have been collaborate with us. So of course, we are collaborating with Happy Moose, that is the group that we were invited. But for example, last year, we have been collaborating with the pedagogical department of UNICAMP, and we're organizing a course on computer music analysis containing students from UNICAMP, from Universidade Federal da Paraíba, and some students from UNICAMP together. So using quite similar technology as we have been used today, but more interactive, because the class, they were given simultaneously in João Pessoa, in Campinas, and in Paris. So this is one collaboration we do with UNICAMP, also with Mikhail Malt and other things. So that means other people that has been collaborating with us, of course, are people from USP, from the NUSON and the music department. There are the nucleus with the Panorama Studio that help us to build up this colloquium. Okay? Other people that collaborate with us is Professor Didier Guiguet. He has this group in Universidade Federal da Paraíba that developed these libraries called SOAL. So we have also tried to develop new tools for SOAL using, let's say, mere technology in connection to analysis of orchestration, and also we try to combine symbolic analysis of musical material with audio analysis. So we have also collaborated very closely with Professor Paul Verchou from Universidade Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona. Some of the things I'm going to discuss with you today, some of the examples were developed with his group. Also, we have been collaborating with Professor Marcelo Vanderlei for a long time. Some of our students have been doing research there at McGill University. And most of the research is concerned to develop interface, develop new instruments to control some aspects of the interactivity, and also some aspects of the computer models that we are using for studying creativity, musical creativity, and also to study performance. So this is a very brief and very short overview, most to introduce the projects. And there are other projects that I even mentioned here. I'm sorry about that, but there are projects that they were supervised by Professor Fornari, Eduardo Fornari, and Professor Adolfo, and Professor Rafael, and they may talk about them or today or on the round table and so on. But the idea here is only to give you a very short introduction, because you know somehow how we try to work together. So, ending that, I will, most of my talk today is inspired by last roundtable, yesterday roundtable. I didn't change too much my sound examples, but I changed the way I connect them for discussing today. But there is the first example that I'm going to give you, it's somehow stimulated by Jean class when he showed that there was people that killed MIDI disc clavier. So when he was introducing that, I said to myself, we have also killed the MIDI disc clavier in our lives. So, and to introduce the topic, I decided to introduce you a work that we have been worked in 2007 with 3 PhD students, 2 PhD students and 1 master student, that's called Continuamente. So I will play this, and the image is not that good, but it gives you an idea and explain briefly what's going on. So sorry, I saw that the video was not so good as I would wish. Sorry, but I suppose it's important to present this example for many reasons. So, of course, there is this connection, as I already described you, but this piece, this work, introduce one of the aspects that I would like to discuss with you today. And the main idea of this, in terms of musical concept and research concept, is expressed on this slide. So the idea was apply the concept of self-organization as a paradigm for live interactive composition system, for developing a live interactive composition system. And in that way, allowing a constant refurnishing of the musical structures. So the idea is, if you conceive somehow your composition as a system, if you conceive the way people are going to play your music in a concept of a system or a complex system, you can change a little bit the way you understand is the role of the composer, the role of the performer, and the role of the exposition of the material. So, of course, the way the things are connected are much more related to improvisation. So we're going to have ways of people dialogue between themselves, but some of the material is really created in real time at the stage. And the basis for that creation is improvisation. So actually, the diagram here tells us a little bit of the way we put everything together. So we have the improvisation is a kind of cloud that somehow glued the interaction between people. We have improvisation, free improvisation. We have improvisation that it's also connected to some graphic scores. We have improvisation that are connected to the way you use their interface. So as you saw, I don't know if you saw clearly, but there are interfaces that are producing sounds by, for example, percussion. We have to percussion on the floor. So as we percuss the floor, there's a MIDI signal that was sent to the computer, and the computer distributes these signals in the network, and some of the signal goes to the disc clavier. So that means the disc clavier is somehow an agent of the system. So we consider the sound that is produced by the disc clavier as one of the characters or one of the agents of the system. So on the other hand, I was there with the performers. We don't have too much distance, so as they produce some inputs, I was trying to interact with them. So we have a kind of a dialogue between the production of the material and the way we, let's say, mount, the way we merge the material. So it's very much also a translation, from my point of view, of the very lonely way of electroacoustic composer work at the electronic studio. They are there, they are trying to find good sounds and so on, but sometimes they are only themselves trying to find this. And this proposal is somehow, how about to use interactivity? How about to use improvisation and computer models to bring this whole production structure, this whole production cycle to the stage, and try to make the composer and the performance, we call here agents, to discuss music with sounds. So this is the idea, most of things that I'm going to discuss today. So as a reference, as a theoretical reference, I will introduce you most of the ideas that are written in this chapter of this book that was released last year from Strungman Forum in German. The book is called Language, Music, and the Brain. So there are many topics, and one of the topics I wrote with Professor Paul Verschoor, and we discussed in this chapter what we said as computational modeling of mind and music. We have discussed how can some models that are recently developed or after the 70s are developed to understand how brain works in computer modeling, in terms of computer modeling, can also dialogue with some aspects of interactive composition. So our claim is very simple. As we have in the traditional artificial intelligence approach, we have this problem of how you really grasp the idea of intelligence using computer models. We also have this problem when we talk about music creativity. And our very simple, or at least answer for that, is the answer of my talk today, is somehow we need to put agents. We have to think about agents interact among themselves. The agents can be musicians, the agents can be virtual agents, and the agents can be machines. So that means the concept is to somehow describe the composition and the way people produce music by a system, by a network where things are exchanged using many ways. One of the ways that I will express today is improvisation, but it's not the only way. Okay. So, my talk landmarks, or I'm gonna now to move to some concepts that were somehow stimulated by yesterday discussion. So I prepared this during this night. That means for sure you're going to see that there is a, let's say, a reaction, or let's say something about these concepts. I will also show you more 2 examples of this, what I say, live interactive composition, and I will somehow present an idea that can be an open idea to be discussed later on the round table. Okay, so here it's a more epistemic point of view. So the idea for me is that we can see that musical notation, the way we represent music, has evolved, as I think, or as we are discussing here, from the symbolic notate pitch expression to the internal organization of the sound. Sound take a place in the music today. So people is thinking about sound, how sound also is connected to music production and also to composition. So on the other hand, we have seen people that are developing new techniques to play traditional acoustic instruments. And with that techniques, they are somehow change the way the acoustic instruments are conceived primarily. And also there are people that are developing technology to create interface, to create digital musical instruments. So I think maybe it's my claim or whatever today, is that these things add new dimensions to the notion of a musical information, and also to the idea of symbolic representation. We have to enlarge the aspects that we are considered when you discuss musical information, when you discuss the way people produce music, the way people dialogue or conceive music. So the second point is that, so with this new technology that have been somehow emphasized interaction and novel interface. So there's a question that has been raised, a question that maybe we can use interactive composition, live interactive composition, to play a role not only in terms of creative understand of the artistic product, but also take a role of how we understand computers, computer models, and musicians. They are related, how they dialogue among themselves. So that means I'm thinking that live interactive composition is not only a way of producing an artistic artifact, but also it's a way of understand how this interaction between machines and human can be done. Why? Because I think it is important. Don't forget that all these things are conceived in a very large ecology. Ecology of machines, ecology of thoughts, ecology of people, ecology of motion, ecology of thinkings. So that means it's very interesting if you try to somehow, in some respect, to put these things together. And what people say yesterday came out, what said in the literature, a more situate and externalist view of performance. I will go a little bit further about this concept as my talk is developing. So is there any question about this? This is the main point of view of this talk is clear? Okay. So musical representations, this is a long story. So, and we are coming from notate neumas to notate pitch in the score. We change the way we represent the score itself is a tool to grasp ways of combining material, because the score itself is a technology to see symmetry, is a technology to conceive many things as a tool, as a model. The score itself is a model. So that means there's not much difference in terms of concept. So when you talk about, for example, Zenak's drawings about how we connect some structure of him using SCT, this is the first version of SCT4. So there's somehow a connection between this symbolic representation and a concept, this is my point, a concept of a system, a concept, a way of design the interaction of the material with the tools we are using to articulate the material, for example, performance. But also, computer articulates the material. So that means we have many ways, and the composer also articulate, language articulates this. So now comes this panoply of incredible possibilities of representing music. We can represent music talking about music, and that's a very efficient way. We have been used that for many years. And somehow it's somehow what Stefan Schaub's told us at the beginning of his talk. So we have graphics, we have MIDI, algorithm, spectrogram, audio description. These are all ways of somehow representing, somehow express the way music is organized. And today, okay, somehow we have been presented two extreme points here. One we call symbolic, and the other one we call audio. I decided last night to introduce this level that I call process. And I put them between symbolic and audio. What I mean is the concept of process that's connected to the idea of system. So that means somehow, I think with the computer technology and the concept that we have been used nowadays, there is an interplay between the possibilities of manipulating or conceive process and manipulate audio. So, and as much these models are somehow way of express not only formalization, as we are doing that very well, formalization of musical thought, but this also is a way of interact. Because if you have a model, you can think this model in terms of computer creativity. Is that autonomous, independent? There's no bigger brain than the human brain, or where you go. It doesn't make sense to talk about computer creativity. So I don't know the answer for this, but I will at least express what I think about that. It's clearly that was somehow there's a connection about this, about the discussion we had yesterday. Okay, so, but I don't think you have to stop. So computer and human, there's no more creativity. So computer is not creative or only human or whatever. So that means there are ways of understanding that. So, and of course, because there are ways, I think research is about understand things, even if you think this is a difficult topic, that strikes us in some ways. So, of course, there are many problems. So I'm going back to Ada Lovelace's Lady Byron prophecy. Let's say like that. Ada Lovelace, she said, oh, sometimes in the future, when she is discussing Milton-Babbitt engine for making calculations, the first Babbage, sorry, I make a mistake. I make a confusion with the composer. This is for some psychological reasons. But anyway, when she was discussing the machine that is a kind of prehistorical computer, she said, oh, this machine that manipulates symbols and manipulate ideas together, will be very useful to make music. One of the main point she stressed at that time, I forgot to put but it was in 19th century, was, well, I don't see a problem that in very short future, we're going to have machines that are somehow creative or whatever, what's creative is that. Okay? So the second thing is there a computer creative? Well, that means we are competing with computer in terms of creative. There's a limit for creative. What's creative? So there has been a very, very long discussion, debate. One of the most traditional answer for that is what Dolph mentioned yesterday. So is the Turing test. So that means if somebody that is creative says that what is produced by the machine is creative, so there's a connection between that this thing is creative in somehow. So there are many references. So, and that is some aspect is one of the problems we have when we use computer models in music and try to talk about musical statics and computer model. And the second point is, I'm saying that despite this debate is somehow the base of the many of emergent computational creativity tools, I don't think it's not only that problem that we can use to define creative. What I mean is they can produce reasonable music, reasonable sounds or whatever, but it's still a question, a deep question that is somehow took by Searle when he's making a debate between the Turing test and the artificial intelligence. And this is let's say, the overall, let's say, point that maybe of the surface of the future, that means it sounds like it's not to be equated to emulate the underlying generative process. That what's said is that it sounds like good music. It is not enough to say that it's creative what this machine is producing. So that means the Turing test, there are machines that can pass the Turing test, but from this perspective, they wouldn't be creative. So we have a problem. So that means our judgment sometimes is posed as enough. And for others, it's not enough. So how can we deal with this problem? I really don't know exactly, but what at least I would like to discuss with you today is some ways that we have been worked together in terms of creative process, in terms of computer models, and address this process using the very powerful tools that we have in our hands as we are musicians, analysis and creation. But analysis and creation, they are not separate. They are dialoguing. It's not like, tell me what's there that I'm going to use. No, it's not at all. I have to evaluate what's there, to feel what I analyze, to produce good music. So that means, of course, the computer model is important to us, and all the analytical process is, of course, it's important. But without our experience with them, we're going to solve the major problem. So creation and analysis, they have to work together. So that because of it, I'm very proud to be here to talk to you. Because I know that you are very concerned about it. Nobody here put more power in analysis and less in creation. We know that. We know that you need these two things to work together. Without this dialogue between this, it will be difficult to solve this problem. Maybe we're not going to solve it, but at least we're going to enjoy our lives and see our expressions being played in somewhere and being at least expressed part of our thinkings. Okay, and now I'm going to skip a little bit, give you a break about this concept, and I go to introduce you another work. And I will perform the work and play the video, and the video is much better than the other one, and I will continue my discussion. I think it's, of course, you can have the video at the internet, but I think it's enough to put my point. So as you saw in the video, at the example, we have a concept of a performance of a plot that is based on the idea that two human performance and an avatar controlled by a computer system or interact among themselves. So the role of them is to produce material to be processed by the other. So in the role of, let's say, the composer or the person that somehow designed the system that I share with other people was to find a way of these three characters, these three agents, talk among themselves. Using tools like sensors, using tools like computer models, and also using tools that's a very strong tool, that's improvisation. But in that sense, what do I mean by improvisation? Of course, improvisation, there's something special. That means for the way you will furnish improvisation in that idea of make something now, it's very connected with the concept of trying to adjust concepts with real life. So that means you have a concept, but you have to play the concept. It's nothing without performance. So, of course, the other things that are somehow developed around the plot, or the way we are describing the story, so the story is somehow related to how the percussionist produces sounds to produce the trajectory of the dancer, and how the dance produces motion to be also performed by the avatar. So that means they are remaking material. So that the sound of the percussion is used by the dancer to produce other material that's used by the avatar. So that means the idea is in the name of we have a repercussion. And I like to make jokes, so there are many ways of saying that, but at least it's repercussion, or in Portuguese is better. It's a repercussion of the material that is propagating between the agents that is responsible for producing the result. So that's give an idea of how maybe to work or to connect creative and computer models in this way. So we have a lot of things together, trying to adjust, and we have the possibility of explore this material and the dialogue between this material, and understand musical performance, and also as a creative process, and everything is connected to creative when this plot goes to stage. And this is a recreation and not a mere reproduction of a work. And I think, I'm stressed that I think everybody knows that, even in any kind of performance, any kind. But I'm emphasize that in a way that means we are trying to use the computer models, using the interactions and the way the work is conceived to somehow make it a more clear use of that. Okay? So the second problem that we have with the technologies and the way we can deal with information is called the data deluge. That means, I'm reading, our ability to extract data from natural and artificial phenomena in different scientific disciplines in our area by far exceeds our ability to understand it. So that means, very simple, our sense and the way we capture nature and the way this fills us in terms of brain and body is much more large than the way we have to understand and to make models about that. Our experience is larger than our capacity to talk about our experience. It's a very simple thing. Oh, nobody. I forgot to switch off my. Let me. Stupid. Okay. Anyway, I think it's a clear point here. So that means, what can we do? Okay, no answer for that. Maybe not. Maybe how about to put experience at the center of the research project? How about try to use experience to mediate understanding? Oh, understand not only music, but understand other things that we do. But basically, we're discussing about music today. So the point is now, is the research proposal that we have been working. So in some ways is that, so music in itself as experience has a large, let's say, large set of information that can be evaluated and can be put on this paradigm. We know it. We are aware about that. So, but on the other hand, we may use this approach also to help others to understand their local view about, for example, complexity. So that means, how about to use music and live interactive composition as a tool to help people to understand complexity? So maybe that's possible. So that is one of the things we tried last year. That's also I present. Some of you know this example, but I'm going to show you a little bit the video, and I'll explain you later. So for some of you, we have seen a small electroacoustic composition, or ever, maybe a bad one, but anyway, it's there. There's a sound, there's audio material, but what's the purpose of these small electroacoustic composition? Of course, in that sense, these electroacoustic sounds and these very much relate sounds with noise, with audio features. They are used to help people to understand the complex systems that is the brain. So we are doing the way around. So that means our experience that has been also used in electroacoustic music by listening to sounds, listen to the spatialization, listens the way the sounds are molded, how the sounds are transformed, can be also a kind of non-verbal language to help people to understand a complex system. Because our experience with this material is complex. So how to try to combine, because at the end, the human is one. the experiences of Penny, that is the one of the authors of the article, myself, Martinez, and Verschu, but the experience of that person that was interacting with the environment is similar of our experience. So that means, but now we can somehow use this experience to give cues in the navigation of the structures of the brain by using what? Using timbre, sound aspect, change of sound aspects, and change of sound location, change of the sound mode, and so on, in very specific way, using the concept of sound objects as a way of a person, let's say, goes inside this complex structure. So our claim is that, so by using this technology, we are constructing a soundscape that is unique, related to the experience of the person that is navigating with the sounds that are there to be explored. And our, let's say, what we guess, what we want to find out is that experience with sound a helpful tool to make people to understand this complex system. But what's in the middle of this is the experience. The experience that is mediated by the computer model and the experience that is mediated by the way we built the sounds. So, of course, the evaluation of the results we have been trying to evaluate. So we're going to evaluate the results by looking at the behavior of the agent using motion caption and other filters. And also we're going to evaluate the produced soundscape. And if somebody goes there and repeats some soundscapes with some coherence, with some organization, it's because these organizations somehow connect to the way this person is perceiving the complexity of this brain jungle. Okay? So I go to the recapitulation of my talk to finish. So I discussed a little bit, I didn't answer the big question, but I give you some examples, okay? And the methodological idea is why an agent and a group of interact with the system. All multimodal signals produced by the agents are captured and analyzed in real time and so stored for future offline, and also real time and remote analysis. So that means if you can record them, you can also analyze in real time, we can also analyze in offline. So, and this is the statement for studying music cognition, and also creative, in its fullness and understand its process of discovery and creativity. It's necessary to examine how the brain and the body work together in the solution of such complex problems. So, and there are some goals, some ideas. So that means how to develop methodology, how to develop tools. So some tools are improvisation, as I've said, using live interactive composition and produce as a way of producing artistic artifact, but also to produce ways of interaction, using visualization of computer models. For example, Jean already showed yesterday something that Charlie's work, but also I have another point here that I'd like to start a little bit, is a sonification of a model. Let me express a little bit what I mean by that. Of course, imagine if you make a model of a music, whatever music is, from Bach or from Xenax. Okay, you can make a graphic, a visual representation of that. But imagine now that you use your model to produce sound. But it's not the sound that the composer has produced, but the sound that represents the behavior of the model. in the space or wherever. So that means you can use the model and the sound of the model as a way of people have an experience with the model. In such a way that people may understand your analysis, understand the way you conceive the piece by its own experience. By performing with sounds, by listening to sounds. So mixed reality installations as we had, as for example, Clayton is working, producing creative installation. But now I'm going to stress only one thing that is an idea that somehow is stimulated by one of the ideas came from Adolfo's statement, and the other one was from Gerard's statement yesterday when he talked about instantiation of models, and so on. So I'd like to open or give you some ideas. This is very explorative, let's say, thing about instantiation, convergence, and attractors. So for that, I need 5 minutes to express what I mean. So I want to try to join instantiation and embodiment in such a way. We have a model, whatever model is, but you can understand this model and you can think about this model. That one of these instances is the piece, but we have others. Okay, we have already said that, it's no problem about it. So that means one way of understanding this model is this model as a dynamic system. Okay? So that means, of course, if you understand this model as a dynamic system, we have ways of manipulate it, or ever manipulation. But one of the classical one is to manipulate the boundary conditions and the control parameters. So that means it is not difficult to think that this exploration leads us to a broad space that we are going to produce things or instances. Depends on the way you change the boundary conditions that are maybe or not so even connect with the music, with the piece that stimulate us to produce the model. We go far beyond because here is a kind of freedom to express our creativity in the thing we have developed as we do with musical instruments. Okay, and so on. Maybe this is completely hypothetical. This is a thing I'm putting spontaneous. I don't have completely control of this, but it's a speculation. So some of the things, some of the instantiations in the space where we represent the dynamic system or where we represent the model, they can produce attractors. What I mean by attractors? Situations where even change the parameters or even change the boundary conditions, they go to there. They are stabilized there. They converge to there. Some of these convergences, they are not talking direct to the composer piece. They are going to be different. Something maybe that sounds like the composer, some not sound like. So now we open the system to an exploration. So that means this model it somehow can be used by composers, by analysis to somehow be explored in very, very broad sense of artistic expression, also in terms of analysis and creation. So, as we said already, we can have sonification, visualization, and that's what I say in the beginning of my talk, augmented cognition. But one of them that maybe it's very important for us, at least for things I have been talking to Stefan and some of you at NICS, is improvisation. Because improvisation, in the time you produce the structure, you are having your body, your brain, and your instrument to produce it. We can't skip. Everything is going on. Is going on. So that means, for me, it's interesting because in my concept, this is a very short and particular concept. This is my concept of embodiment. So we have a good example in improvisation, but also improvisation in a broad sense, not in the sense of only improvise with instruments, acoustic instruments. We can improvise with computers. We can improvise with other things. And all the things makes for us a possibility of, let's say, extend the concept. If our representation is somehow connected to the model, and the model is a computer model, or whatever model we are using, but in our case, might be a computer model, we also use the model not only to understand the original problem, but to use the model to understand some other problems or other things that are connected to creative and to music production. And I think it's a very good way of address the problem of computer creativity. Sorry. So how I summarize it? So, okay, my answer for that is so simple after all this, but I believe in that. So that means propose a dialogue between people, a dialogue between tools and models. So propose a dialogue between live interactive composition with improvisation, digital immersion, and augmented cognition. So combine multimodalities using interactive media and improvisation. Produce digital immersion and augmented cognition as a product of this dialogue. And somehow, using the study, the human cognition, creativity, using large database generated by computer, or whatever computer does for the computer models, the sensors that come from the sound of the machine, the sound of the instruments, and a computer graphic sensor device and biosignals. And okay, it's too much, but anyway, I don't know if I have tools to do all the things, but what I want to stress here, if we want to discuss or understand or whatever creative and computer creative is, or what computer mode and computer mode of music is, we don't have to put man and machine in competition. We don't have to say one is better than the other, as we are not better than ourselves. We have to dialogue. We have to put as much power as you have to make these things to dialogue among themselves. And that's the way you can also augment our understand of music creativity and also understand our experience about life. So that's it. I hope you have questions.
Internet question for now.
Thank you. I was quite fascinated by the video examples you showed of the pieces that you have contributed to. But I was wondering what is exactly the kind of computer processing that is happening in this creation. Could you give us just a few details, for instance, on the first or second piece?
Of course.
Of what's really happening, because it's intriguing.
But what are the pieces you're talking about? Some of them? Okay, most of let's talk about, I think, the piece that has the better video, the second piece. Okay, that's called Repercuss. Okay, this is a multitask performance that there are many people working together. So that means we work like a production. So my responsibility on that was to conceive the computer sound models. So that means, and what's going on there is, in the stage, we have sensors for example, to take motion caption, We have sensors to take, by using infrared, to taking the attack, and also we're using the audio descriptor of the attack of the percussionist at the beginning to propagate a signal that's going to be by the dancer. So that means, in general terms, we have one layer of sensors that represent the way you perceive things. Another level, you have the level of the models. The major mode to make music production is called Roboser. It's a model we have been developed in 1998 that was one of the first models where we use robotics and computer algorithmic composition to produce some organized sound. So in that plot, we're using Roboser. Roboser is not anymore a machine. Roboser is a model of combine the concept of robotics in terms of real-time, real-world device, or conceive robotics as the interaction of a network of agencies, where you have machines, where you have also performance. So, and Roboser was in the middle of let's say the dialogue between them producing sounds. We have predefined materials, not everything is done in real time. The graphics were produced by Bedad Rejazad, that is Bedad Rejazad. He's an artist from Barcelona, he's a video artist. So he produced small videos that are describing 4 elements of the piece. So, and also the dancer and the percussionist, they don't have a score. They have a traditional score. They have a graphic score that is connected to Laban notation. I try to connect Laban notation with sound notation by graphic score. For example, one of the intentions was about, in Portuguese we say wind. How we can propagate the concept of wind in this performance. So the dancer has to think about and produce motion of wind. And the percussionist has to think about wind and produce sounds that are somehow connect to wind. We talk about skin. So the percussionist has to produce sound of skins in the drummer's skin on their body. So they're all mediation between perception and models. And the perception is also mediated by the performer, and also is mediated by the model that we use to express the concept. For example, one of the examples, for example, when the percussionist plays in her body, producing some sound, these sounds we know, and because we have rehearsed, is going to be connected to the area of the memory of the plot that's connected to skin sounds and screen description. So when the avatar is somehow making his solo, he takes material from these 4 databases. There's a database of motion caption, there's a database of sounds, and there's a database of visual concepts, or visual material. So that means the performance is not recorded. There are some material that are pre-recorded, but they are not put in sequence, and there are material that are produced in real time. But the most important material that's produced in real time is the way people dialogue. So we use these using sensors to refurnish the piece, or let's say, make the performance unique in some aspect. As any other performance is unique, of course. I think Adolfo wants to ask me a question.
My question is related to the complexity of your system. Your systems. The first, I have 2 questions. The first one is, what do you mean for model?
Okay, this is a very mathematician question. Okay, he had asked me, oh, Adolfo, you know what I mean by model, but model can be many things, but in my talk was really a model created by a computer algorithm. This was the model I was talking about, but can be even larger than that. But in my talk, my model is expressed by a computer algorithm.
So you want to represent in sound the algorithm itself.
Somehow is when I say sonification. When I said at the end, when I said at the end sonification of the model here. So that's what I meant. So if I have a model here that represents the piece as such as a computer algorithm, express the way the composer thought about the piece, and one of the instances is the piece itself, I said, how about to use that model, this computer algorithm, to produce other kind of sounds that somehow express the way the model described the piece. And how about to use this experience of listening to this sound as a way of understand the original piece somehow, and also understand the experience that the model mediates for me or for the analyst.
But what do you expect that the listener understand all this complex system that you're in your mind?
No, it's not in my mind, in our minds. The complex system is in our. What I mean is, I expect that people interact with the system and have experience. The idea is using
the performers or the listeners?
Everybody. I don't think it doesn't need to be an experience in the stage. Can be an installation, can be an experience, for example, in the last example, it will be material for students to understand, to learn about the brain. So so that means, of course, I'm not thinking only about my individual creation. That means as a composer. If you address the question, what I think about that as a composer, I will answer you as well. But let's be clear that my talk was a little bit more broad than my personal view about it. But my personal view about that, as a composer, I expect that this kind of technology, this kind of dialogue, enlarge the concept of what composer is. Or at least change. So that means from a very skilled guy that is writing very complex music or whatever, to a person that mediates with sound or also with multimedia material experiences. That's also, it's always like that. But I want to stress that we can use multimodal experience as a way of interact with technology and visual arts and music and so on.
Okay. My last question, the last one.
No, you can ask many.
It's about
But I was expecting you to ask me some questions about the Turing test and information theory.
Yes,
I'm surprised you didn't ask me.
You answered the question that I had. You answered the Turing test. But anyway, my question now is the following. You have a lot of database to control. Okay, so you have audio, visual, and you try to interact all these things in your unique model that understand that can have a lot of different performances. The same model can have it depends, for example, if you choose the sound database, for example. You can change everything. For example, if you use strings, only strings, or use only percussive sounds. Different for the listener, at least.
Of course.
But my question is, so you know the double pendulum, okay?
Yes, a
So
very
you
complex
have,
dynamic
okay,
system.
Yes, but you have only two parameters.
Mm-hmm.
How will you expect that you control so much, different parameters that you have in your models? And what do you understand as attractors that you mentioned in singular points and something like that?
Yes, maybe my short answer, I don't expect the person is going to control it. That's I took out of the question. I don't talk about control. I'm talking about experience. And experience is different than control. Let me be clear about that. I'm not saying, yeah, but I'm not saying, but I'm not saying in the average that the guy that is interacting with the system understands everything that's going on and has a control. The idea is not that. That means the idea is if you have such a system as we are trying to develop together in some ways, and we are able somehow to record that broad experience in database, at least you can grasp for different analytical aspects what is going on there. That's the idea. So that means in real time or in offline, somebody that can go there in this huge database and see how can I understand this from the perspective of motion and timbre. How motion changed timbre. This is one very difficult question to deal with. No, I'm not talking about only motion and acoustic instrument, but I'm talking about if you have a DMA, digital musical instrument. So that means the data is there. So that means, of course, but the data is there and was recorded while somebody was interacting, while somebody is trying to dialogue. So that means at the maximal moment, the only thing I know is to give opportunity to the human brain to do what it does the most, that's experience. And that means understanding it can be somehow confined to a specific, let's say, a specific area of study that we're going to develop with the data. But instead of reduce the data at the beginning, we expand the data and try to use the analysis of specific fields or specific things to understand basically things. Because sometimes when you reduce basic things to basic and simple modes, we don't understand the simple. Simplicity is more complex than complexity. Or ever. So that means enlarge and use the experience and record it. And have tools. We have tools, what I mean, audio descriptors, motion caption, all them are there. So that means we can fulfill our understanding about later, I guess. This is a proposal, this is, okay. Moreno também quer fazer uma pergunta.
We have an internet question. It comes from Tiago Brizolaro. So he wants to ask you about the example you just gave, avatar, video, sounds, all accessing databases. This model is related to a dynamic model in some way, or is just a computer model? If not, do you have an example of work where you use unification of the dynamical model? Okay.
So in that plot where the computer model, there are many computer models, there's not only one model. The big model is the network. So that means we can see the big model of Hyperpercurso is how we put the models and the interaction between the machines and people in a network, as we are doing now. So the big model is the network is the model. This is one level. The second level, we have different models to achieve different tasks. In terms of a model for sound and sonification, the example is the example of Roboser. I think I wouldn't go to show now, but he can go to the internet and type Roboser, because Roboser was our first experience. When you take when you combine an algorithmic composition system with the behavior of the machine, and we use the dialogue between the robot in the space with the behavior of the algorithmic system to produce sound. This was the first thing. Also, we have done another thing here at with Artemis Moroni at the CTA in Campinas. It's called Aural system. At the same way, we have robots, we have computer mods, and the robots talk to the computer mod and produce sound. They also Aural, A-U-R-A-L, also is an example of that.
No, we have more two questions, and goes in the sense, I guess. because it comes from Guilherme, and he says, as a former student,
Yes,
I
know
saw
him.
some of these pieces and ideas during the course, but there is some difference that I can point out very specifically now from that point of his life until now. So he wants you to make a little explanation of what changed in your concepts and your models from that period to this point of your work.
Oh, Guilherme, it's a very difficult question. I'm going to be very brief. I think I'm going to give an example without playing, but my way of writing music for orchestra changed a lot after have been working with this system. We work together with granular synthesis and piece for orchestra. Very briefly, I try to think about the instruments' behavior in the orchestra as a network as well. Not to try to exchange motifs or whatever chords, but to change process. And the way it sounds when it's performed is a kind of something between a textural music and, as I understand, okay, and a kind of soundscape. So that means it changed my way of thinking about composition in that way. That means I think to write music as a composer, I'm free to not try to achieve specific complexity in one point of my score. I think about active small examples of simple things that when they are interact among themselves, they produce complexity. It's a network of I don't stress the performer to play a very complex thing. I guess my approach is to write a small cell that produce some behavior, and the connection with this cell, with the other cell, produce complex. So, on another hand, my scores, my writing becomes less complex, but I hope the result becomes complex as such by the concept of interact the cells.
So there's another question from André Luiz Gonçalves de Oliveira, and he wants to first thank you for the great explanation. And the question is, do you think that we may amplify the aesthetic experience going out of the concert hall or gallery in a way to create our artistic experiences? May you think in something as an innate artistic experience?
I'm going to answer on the first part because I didn't describe too much about the concept of a native experience. It's from Varela concept. I think I would, to answer André's question, it would take a little while, but I think, of course, we should skip. Concert hall is one of many possibilities. As we are going to try here, we're going to present our end concert in Almanac. But as we maybe do, we are going to try to use the space as a way of express the improvisation, the computer graphics. The space with people sitting on tables and listen to music is the performance, as it was in ancient times, as always is in somehow. We took some distance from the performer because maybe it was more practical for the Italian theater, whatever. About a native, the concept of I have not enough time to answer this, André.
Thank you very much, Jônatas, for your presentation. I would like to question you a little bit more about the sonification, because this is a concept which maybe had also a place yesterday in the round table, but we didn't really think about that maybe. I was wondering because we have done some explorations of this, some research about that at IRCAM, particularly with physicists working on soft matters, for example, bubbles evolution. And there is a nice, there was a topic of research for a master student of us in our team, but we came up with the conclusion that maybe sonification alone is not enough, in the sense that we are sensitive to sound. I think your plaidoyer for sound interaction is quite clear, but in the mind, there is another component, which is this goes back to what I show, what I discussed, which are this kind of mental structure, symmetries, and maybe we could try to generalize somehow the concept of sonification to the concept of musification. So I mean that if you want to understand the evolution of a complex system, you can listen to it. And so the experience we had with this with these bubbles, that we saw that in this evolution there are catastrophes coming on. There are moments in which there are really a big change of the state of the system. You cannot see that from a geometrical, just by looking at the evolution of the system, but you can listen.
Exactly.
And this is clear. Sonification is very good for that. But what about the capacity of the ear to put together melodies which are just, for example, transposition from each other? Huh? You sing a melody, somebody other sing a melody in another key. It's the same structure, it's the same pattern, but the sounds are completely different, the notes are completely different. So what remains is the intervallic content, is somehow the interrelationship between the elements. This is an invariant, this is again goes back to group theory, and somehow I think we should put together sonification as a wonderful tool for understanding the sound behind the complex system, but also all these operations which has to do with music. And music and musification can probably be a further step in the understanding of the structure which is hidden in a system. So this maybe put together your symbolic versus interaction dichotomy, which you had at the beginning, in a way which has to do also with perception, cognition, and embodied cognition, I'm sure.
Let me explain a little bit what I mean by sonification. I know, maybe this is not a good word, okay? Because there is a field that people call sonification. They take the structure of the cells or the biological structure and they take the relationship between the connections of a cell and they sonify this and listen to the sound. It's not that I'm talking about. What I'm not, maybe I'm wrong in use the terminology, but I want to give you, I agree with your point. I don't disagree, but I want to make my point clear. My point is, when I say about sonification, imagine, for example, I have to say, with my experience with Charles, okay, he has a model of a piece. We have, and he represents the model in a graphic way. So this model produces graphics, and these models connect to some music. Sonification in that sense is, how about to sonify this model that describing that music? So that means have a sound that's not the sound of the composer, and there is have another sound that is connected to the way you represent the music in terms of computer model. That's the idea.
It's not dramatically different from the scientific sonification that the people are doing when they're sonifying data. So you are sonifying
methodologically.
You're sonifying a model, an algorithm.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
algorithm is also a collection of data.
Course.
But I was wondering, maybe it would be interesting to try to articulate the sonification of your data of your data of the model. I mean, of your model with let's suppose that you have a model, and you musify the model in such a way that you have a score, not just a audio file, but really a score.
Of course, but my point is, I think I'm not making my point clear. I don't disagree with your point, but what I mean is the model that I'm sonifying is not the model of a cell or whatever. It's the model of a composition. So that means there's a epistemic connection. Is it different? For me, it's different. The methodology is the same. But for me, is because that model that I'm sonifying is talking about music. That means, in my sense, at least, when I listen to the sounds, I'm not talking about how wonderful is my experience in listening to the sound of the bubbles, of the cells. I would say maybe the sound is another representation of the analytical process and help me to understand the analysis. That's my point.
You are referring to code, not modification of the code. Modification of the structure.
Of the structure, but it was just...
but anyway, Morena, we can discuss it. But I think it's a little bit different. I think there's a difference, epistemic difference.
More questions? Anyone? No? Okay, well, thank you very much.